What up, y'all? Shouts with Jay. Back at it again with another one. Today we're going to be talking about aliens, right? Aliens, Three Eye Atlas, all of that. Are they aliens? ET? Are they demons? All of that, right? And I am a Catholic, so all of my videos, I'm not going to say I try and, put them with the Catholic teaching necessarily, but since I am Catholic, I'm just going to give you my thoughts as a Catholic. So the first things first, right? As a Catholic, you're allowed to pretty much believe in the possibility of aliens. The church isn't closed off to that or anything like that. The church doesn't pretty much rule or teach definitively that, any aliens out there, they are like demonic or anything like that. It's open to the possibility pretty much that there is ET, and if there is, though, it is from the Creator, which is the God of Abraham, and he just had a pretty much different purpose and a different story for them. You know what I mean? So, but there are issues, there are problems that I see. I guess first, do I believe in aliens? I guess, if I had to roll the dice, if I do or if I don't, I'm gonna say that I do, right? Now, by that, what I mean is that, there's something going on for sure. Like, there's tons of UFOs. You see these UFO conferences. You see these UFO conferences. You see, like, before Congress and things like that, they have these pretty much this footage from like Air Force and all these jets and things like that of objects moving so fast in the sky. They got no idea what they are. They can't track the trajectory. And of course, right, is this due to like higher clearance not knowing? Is this different nations and drones or different tech? Or is this really not something but someone from out there, right? And with aliens, right, I guess the reason, if I had to pick, if it's yes or no, yes or no, give me a yes or no answer to your yes or no question. I'm going to say yes just because the cosmos, it's so big. But there are pieces of me that kind of doubt a little bit. I used to be like, super into aliens and, ET, all of those things. I still am. I watch like, Three Body Problem, actually ET, Phone Home, all of that. But there are issues, with Christianity. Not necessarily issues, because there's like right ways and wrong ways of interpreting things, right? But like, okay, so like, hear me out, right? So for one, the Bible teaches that there is a dome, right? Now the issue is that we don't know exactly what the dome is. Like, it says, yes, it's around the earth. It separates us and the waters in heaven and things like that. But my thing is, how big is the dome, right? How big is it expanding? Like, is it out there in space where the dome ends? Or is it just us in our confined circle right here on Earth? Because let's just say there are aliens, ET, right? Now, the dome is something, like, we can't ignore the dome, but that might be like they're within the dome, or, there's just so many questions. Another question that I have, right, is pretty much Adam and Eve, they committed sin, and we inherited pretty much the fall from them. We inherited original sin from Adam and Eve. We have the ability to sin because of Adam and Eve, right? If Adam and Eve never disobeyed God, if Eve never did what she did, and if Adam never, got persuaded and influenced by Eve, we would still be in Eden, right? Where everything was perfect, everything was right, and they didn't, right? So here we are in this fallen world. It's a shame. World ain't fair, but it is what it is. This is where we're at right now. But because of them, ultimately, we have Jesus Christ, because he came to die for our sins. So if that never happened, the second person of the Trinity may have never came in human form, which is Jesus Christ, right, of Nazareth. But here's the thing, right? If there is ET, if there is aliens out there, capable of, I'm not talking, micro or like bacteria, things like that. I'm talking about intelligent life form that has a conscience, that can choose to pretty much do what they want, such as free will, like the way we got free will. So, like, we inherited that fall because we're human, but there's just so many questions like, would they inherit that fall? Because they're not necessarily the ancestors of Adam and Eve. So do they deserve the fall? The way we did. Well, not really, right? Because their kind didn't do that. But that's the thing. If their kind didn't do that, are they capable of sin? That would mean that they're just good, right? There's just so many questions. Like, if aliens can be evil, I just don't know if our original sin expands to them. Because if they did inherit original sin from Adam and Eve, kind of sucks considering it wasn't even your species. You know what I'm saying? If it wasn't even their kind, I mean, that kind of blows. But we can't really question God. It is what it is. And there's just so many things. Like I know, like with Three Eye Atlas, we have like the third interstellar object that has like entered our solar system. I know one was like Muamua, and I forgot the second one. I know Muamua was one of them. And these are all objects that behave differently, compared to normal comets and like meteors and things like that. But Three Eye Atlas is like totally unique because compared to even those like Muamua and the other one, or even compared to like the standard comets in media, this thing just has so many irregularities and so many abnormalities that just act outside what we usually see in a pattern. They just don't follow. Three Eye Atlas is not following a pattern. And what I mean by that is like, every comet or meteor, whenever it's like, just shooting in space, at the end of it, there's a tail. It's like a tail, like a stream of like its path, right? Well, there's just different things like the color of its stream, what's giving what's powering the tail. It doesn't really seem to be influenced by the gravitational forces of like planets or the sun, things like that. At least not the way the others are. And that indicates that if it's not really influenced by the gravitational pull or forces, what's powering it? Is it a mind behind it? If it's things like that. Right now, the moment I'm recording this video, it's 3:11 CT time, November 4th, 2025, right? I know they say, by December, by the time that comes, we'll pretty much have all the observing questions that we have of Three Eye Atlas answered. And that can be whether, they're intelligent or not, if we can see them or not, things like that. But just aliens is just a pretty unique topic to talk about, especially from a religious standpoint. Like, if they did exist, would God mind the coexistence, between humans and aliens with one another? Well, like, this is our planet, right? So if they're not, we obviously dominate Earth. So this is for us, right? So the question is, does he mind us accepting other people, right? Because we have the free will to do that, but would he mind it? Because they're not from here. Maybe he wants people to stay on their planet. There's a lot of there's a lot of questions for sure. Now, if they, there's definitely something out there. So what I'm trying to say is that, with these UFOs and all these things, and I've actually seen several UFOs. Me and my girl actually, she's not here right now, right? But what I mean is, like, me and my girl, she never saw UFOs. She didn't really have any thoughts. She didn't really believe in things like that. And one time we were taking our dog out at night, to go potty and things like that. And I tell her, yo, you don't believe it, right? Or like, you haven't seen it? She's like, yeah, like, that's right. I say, look up. So we look up and we pretty much see like just this thing, not too fast to be a meteor, but it's like, pretty fast. Stars are stationary, at least from our perspective. I know they're actually not. And we just had no idea what it was. It was not a plane. I could tell you that. It was not a plane. It was not a jet. Too fast to be either one of those. So it was a UFO, unidentified flying object, or UAP. I think unidentified aerial phenomena, right? So I guess my thoughts go even further, right? Because here's the weird thing about aliens. or the extraterrestrial or all these UFO sightings. 95% of like all claims and all cases of UFOs, they're not aliens or even like, anything like that. They're usually something that is explainable in a natural sense. What I mean by that is like, they're drones, military aircraft, things like that. You know what I mean? Or a mistake. You may mistake something and they're, I don't know, stars or something. But the whole point is they're not either one of those, right? Because usually whenever they report these things, there's usually teams of like people that go and observe these things, check them out. Let's see what's up, and they just rule it out. They're like, no, they were just mistaken, right? But here's the thing. I guess this whole video, what I'm talking about is that 5%. That 5% that there is just no freaking way we can explain that. You know what I mean? There's just, you can't. You just can't. And of those 5%, there's been different pretty much researchers and guys that have gone out to study these pretty much reports and look into them, investigate what's going on. And I've seen a lot of videos on this stuff, like a lot of videos. And one of the most common findings, right, of people that say they've been abducted or people that claim that they see aliens in real life, like there's been so many instances, like the Las Vegas instance that was recent. It was real. There's no way around that. And we know it's real because door cameras and dash cams at the same time that he called 911 that something crashed in his backyard, they show something green falling from out the sky. So there's just no way, and in that area. So that is real. There's no doubt about that. But even with them, right? So here's the thing. With them or with many other people that have these experiences, they all have not all, but almost all have a pattern of not liking Jesus or Christ, or reacting to things in a negative way, like prayer, holy water, or I rebuke you in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. They don't have a good reaction to that. And that really makes me think, are there even aliens out there? And are these just disguised as aliens, but they're really demons, right? Because I know, like with previous gods, like the Hindu gods and things like that, I believe a lot of the stories happen. But I believe there were demons in disguise to confuse people and pretty much influence them to start a different religion, because that would lead people away from Jesus Christ, or they would have more numbers, which means a reduced numbers in Christianity, things like that. They're very smart. We don't even have a fragment of the intelligence that angels have, right? Or fallen angels, right? But they're angels. So with that being said, when you look at all these things and they have these reactions, it just makes you think, what if all these, like, you usually hear like, oh, like there's no aliens, they're just demons, it's all demonic. You usually hear that just from these ultra conservative Christians. And of course, right, usually you want to blow that out of like the question, like, bro, you need to be more open-minded. You're just close-minded. You're just too, like, it doesn't work like that. A piece of me makes me think, like, man, maybe they weren't tripping. Like, maybe we're tripping. Maybe they're right. Maybe they're right. And it's just crazy because, at first I used to blow that off. Like, come on, bro. Look at the size of the cosmos. Look at what's out there. Like, there's just no way we're the only ones, right? And, man, I mean, here's the thing. The Bible, it only is going to tell us things necessary for salvation. It's not going to tell us everything, right? It's just not. But it does give us things like beware of signs in the skies and things like that. You know what I mean? It's pretty general. It's not specific. Who knows why God chose it to be like that? But he did. And, the Vatican and the secret archives, they for sure know what's up. If there's aliens, 1000% the Vatican knows that there are. And if there are aliens, that means they haven't revealed to us that there are. But likewise, even if they're demons, I would think that they would, though. You know what I mean? So ultimately, I don't know why they're hiding it, but they know what it is, though. Us public, we don't know what it is. But you see how there's points conflicting. Some point to it actually being ET, like the possibility, and other things point to it being actually just demons. Now, man, I could just go further and further, and I will. I guess another thing to bring up is pretty much like one could have the argument, well, Jay, what do you have to say about these um, ships, these UFOs that have crashed and they've actually been recovered by the government, right? CIA, this and that, whatever you want to call them, right? You know, the dudes up top. They've recovered this. Demons are spiritual. They're not physical. You know, and that just makes it, you know, I feel like with all of these things, there's just more questions than answers. And even when we do manage to answer something, in the end, that opens up another question, not an answer. Definitely more question marks and periods. You know what I mean? So I guess the conflicting thing with the recovered spacecrafts or aerial crafts pretty much is like, okay, so we all know like in paranormal activity or like with demonic possessions, demons have the ability to like, I wouldn't necessarily say telekinesis, but they can move objects. You know what I mean? Like there's things like where you'll see a lamp fall in paranormal, or like a cup move, or a cabinet open and close, right? And that's before I'm getting into possession and things like that. Because they can, well, I'll get into that in a little bit, right? But my whole point is if they can move, I heard this the other day, right, from someone. If they can move objects like, you know, cups and cabinets and things like that, what makes you think that if, you know, they have enough willpower and they combine forces, what makes you think that demons literally can't move metal together and tools together and bolts, and in other words, they can actually create the spacecraft? So, you know, that's definitely a possibility to think about. And, you know, I just don't know, right? Because the other thing is like, you see these trajectory paths and you see the speed of the UFOs, and, you know, scientists try and examine it. They say the G-forces, by the laws of physics, it would not allow it. But because of heat reasons, because of like melting, or if a person's inside, they wouldn't be able to withstand that, even if it's a creature similar to us, if they have like blood. They just, you know, there's just so many things, so many conflicting things. And so, just so I can show you all what I'm rocking today, showed it in a previous video, but this is the Smith & Wesson Shield Plus, chambered in 30 super carry. I got the Samsung Magwell out there, Samsung base plate for the mag, 16 plus 1 in the head, so that's 17 rounds right there in a small package. Got the new TLR 6 HLG, so that's the one with upgraded lumens and the green laser. Man, solid piece, love carrying this thing. It's a micro compact, man. You can't really go wrong with this if you're EDCing it. Home defense, probably better if you use something else, but to carry, I mean, this is the golden standard right there. So what I guess I mean by I believe in aliens is I believe that there's something out there for sure. The only thing I'm questioning is, are they demons or are they ET? Because they're one of those, right? But okay, they're there. You know, it's one of those. That they're there. Those things are definitely happening. To reject that nothing is happening, civilians are tripping, it's just military aircraft, it's just a drone. Nah, like, there's definitely something. Of course, right? Some of the sightings are that, and people just haven't realized it. But there's definitely one of those happening right now. It's just hard to kind of put my thoughts on which one it is. And, you know, from a religious standpoint, there's issues with if they are demons or if they are ET, aliens, right? And, you know, if they're, I don't even know which is better. You know, like if there are aliens, do they need a savior because they didn't inherit the fall? Can they coexist? If there's a dome, they can't get out of the dome because the Bible says that. I just don't know where the dome is. Is the dome the cosmos? Is the dome bigger than we think it is? Is the dome actually just the Earth's atmosphere? We don't exactly know what the dome is, but there is the dome for sure. You know, you also hear all these flat Earth theories. there's remember, proof and evidence are not the same. Proof is just like, it's clear cut, it's right there. 2 plus 2 is 4, right? So evidence is just something that supports a claim. That doesn't mean you're right though. So for instance, two people in court go against each other, both provide evidence, but one is right and one is wrong. So with that being said, the flat earthers do have evidence. You know what I mean? They don't have proof, but likewise, most people would say, well, for the round earth, the globers, there is proof, not just evidence. Here's the thing: NASA lies about pretty much everything. I mean, are you really going to trust NASA? NASA, every photo they've ever showed us of the Earth or planets or anything, it's all been CGI edited, and they even admit it. You can go to NASA's website, but the excuse they always use is that pretty much getting a picture from space, it doesn't look like the way you'd get a picture from Earth, so they have to edit things for like color enhancements, clarity, things like that. But I'm thinking, no, you don't. You don't got to do any of that. Why don't you just show us a shitty photo, black and white? Who cares if it's blurry? Who cares if it's crap? Show us the real thing. Stop showing us these edited, cartoon-ass photos that just pretty much fit the agenda and the narrative of what they want to teach in school. Now, is there the Earth? Yeah, of course we're on it, right? But the way it looks outside, it just doesn't. So first things first, like, the Earth is not a perfect circle. It's actually more oval shape. It's not a perfectly round circle, I guess. It's not a perfectly round globe. And it's weird because science actually proves that. Yet in all the pictures NASA shows us, it's always a perfect circle. Things don't add up. I just don't trust NASA. I just don't even know where they get their funds from, honestly. But wherever they're getting their funds from, you know. So it's just, and there's just so many things, man. Like people, like they've recovered like NASA satellites, and you see like they're made out of plastic. But I'm sure some are real because I live like pretty much near SpaceX in Texas, and I see the rockets launch up. They don't always explode. Sometimes, yeah, but they don't always explode. So it just makes you think, where are they going? So in the end, I know it's not really, the best thing to come out with my video, but honest answer is I don't know. I know that I believe it's either one of those things. So aliens or demons or what? There's UFOs. There's something there controlling them, whether it's ET or demonic telekinesis. Who knows what, right? But it's one of those. I just don't know which one. But you guys let me know your thoughts, right? Is it ET? Is there no way it's spiritual? Because spiritual is in the spiritual realm, physical is in the physical realm. Or is it demons, right? Do they have that much power? Do they have that much permission from God to confuse us? Because they have different, like the devil was allowed by God to test Job, things like that. So they can be granted to do things. Nothing is outside of God's permission. So I just, let me know your thoughts. Is it demons? Is it angels? Which side do you lean on? Or are you on the side where whatever we're seeing, whatever we're experiencing, it's neither one of those, and there's nothing there, bro. Like, it's just us. This is military stuff. It's not going to do us any good by wondering these things, and we'll never know the answer. So if that's something you think, let me know in the comments, right? I appreciate, everybody tapping in. Again, like, comment, subscribe. 185 subscribers as of now. Hopefully I reach 200 soon. But I appreciate all the support. Thank you, guys.